hear me now that the sound is better, is quieter? Can everybody please take a seat? If you can find a seat, that would also be very helpful. Thank y'all. We're just going to have to make do with what we got, so sorry about that. We're going to talk really loud into this quiet microphone, and hopefully that will help. So thank you all so much for coming. This is a bit of an experiment. This is a new venue for us. My name is Amy Swigert. I am chair of House District 79 for the DeKalb Democrats. House District 79 covers all of Dunwoody, a little bit of Doraville, a little bit of Chamblee. And my partner in crime is Stacey Efrat. She is one of the leads of Indivisible 6th District, which covers the entire congressional 6th District. And we have partnered to bring you these kinds of forums because it is such an enormous election year. And so we have people running for all kinds of seats, not just the U.S. Senate. We have the presidential race, we have the Senate race, we have county commission races, we have school board races, we have all of our legislators down in the Georgia House and Senate are running for re-election this year. So we want to make sure that we give you all the opportunity to meet the candidates that we'll all be voting on this year. So with that, we wanted to start out by bringing up some folks in the room who have made the brave decision to step up and run for office. So if you are currently running for office and you are not already elected, please start making your way over here, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to introduce yourselves. And while we're waiting, I just wanted to acknowledge some other people in the room. We do have a couple of elected officials. We have our state senator for Senate District 40, Sally Harrell, in the room. And Sally represents this district as well as Tucker and Chamblee and parts of North DeKalb and parts of Gwinnett and parts of Sandy Springs. We also have in the room with us House Representative Mike Walensky. You have no clue. House District 79, which is this area. So thank you for both of you for coming. I also wanted to acknowledge all of the people that are working to get out the vote in this area and beyond. So I wanted to give a shout out to the DeKalb Democrats House District 79 Committee. Can you all, if you're on the House District 79 Committee, the DeKalb Democrats, raise your hand. Welcome your service. I want to recognize the Indivisible 6th District leadership team. If you're on that leadership team, raise your hand. And I also wanted to recognize the chair of the DeKalb Democrats countywide, John Jackson. John right there. Thank you so much. I also want to recognize a lady that was just elected to be the new chair of the DeKalb Young Democrats, Cindy Thomas. She's here. She'll be helping to get out the vote among younger voters. And then we also in the room, who is also a sort of an honorary member of the House District 79 Committee, we have Parker Short, who is the head of High School Democrats of Georgia. And last but not least, I do want to acknowledge our hosts today. I want to acknowledge the staff at Hobnob. Please greet them. This is an experiment for them as well as for us. We've never held an event like this here. They've never held an event like this here, so please excuse all of the technical difficulties. But please also thank them by ordering lots of food and ordering lots of drinks and patronizing them when you're not at this event. I come here all the time with my family, and it's a wonderful place to enjoy a meal. So thank you so much to Hobnob. So where do we have our candidates here? Fantastic. So let me start bringing up up our candidates who are running for various offices, and I'll ask you to tell us your name and what district that you're running in.
Hi everybody, my name is Louisa Wakeman and I am running for House District 43 in East Cobb. And I ran last election as a first-time candidate. We came within 800 votes, less than 800 votes. Less than 800 votes of winning this seat. We can win this seat in November, and I would love your support. ElectLouisa.com.
Who else is running for office? You gotta yell.
I got it. Hi everybody, my name is Caroline Holko. I am running for House District 46, which is currently held by John Carson, who brought you such gems as Campus Carry, which I'm not a fan of. Yeah, let's undo that. I am at Caroline446 across social media. My website is carolineholko.com. I would like to take a moment to ask any of you who are able to attend the State Board of Elections meeting. That is going to be on Wednesday, January 22nd at 9 a.m. in the Sloppy Floyd building. This is really important. We really have to turn out for this. You can find the event on Facebook as PAC, the Georgia State Election Board meeting. Again, I'm Caroline Holko for House District 46. Let's bring some progressive values to East Cobb and Southeast Cherokee.
Thank you for that very important reminder. We've got another candidate. Andrew, you want to come up? You gotta yell.
I gotta yell. Can you hear me? My name is Andrew Ziffer. I am running for DeKalb County School Board for District 1, which covers Brookhaven, Doraville, Dunwoody, and Chamblee. I hope to be a better partner than our current incumbent and actually want to make friends and not war in the school district. And if you want to talk about schools, please catch me here and let's talk about schools.
My name is James Herndon. I'm running for Cobb County Sheriff. It's time that we get Neil Warren out of office. If you've seen what's going on there, we've had 48 in-custody deaths while he's been the sheriff. It's time for him to go. You can check out my campaign at HerndonForSheriff.com and on Facebook as well at Herndon for Sheriff. Thank you.
So thank you all for coming, all of the candidates. Thank you all for running. And please support these candidates. It's so important, all of these races, and they all need your support. So I'm going to bring up another member of the indivisible 6th District team because we actually, unbeknownst to you all, are doing a secret raffle. And so I'm going to have Zane come up and tell you about it.
All right.
Zane.
Well, everybody, as Amy said, we're doing a bit of a secret raffle. We have 5 Indivisible Guide books that we're giving away. Reach under your seat, on the right side of your seat. If you have a piece of paper that says winner, you're one of the 5 winners. So it's on the bottom of the right side of the seat, right
Ew. Is that what you hope? Oh man, I took out. I'm gonna have to get this. Thank you. That's super exciting. What a good association.
Again, if you have a little piece of paper that says winner under your seat, then you've won a book from the Indivisible founders about civic engagement. So thank you to the Indivisible folks for doing that, for doing our secret raffle. I am going to bring up my partner in crime, Stacey Pratt, who is going to explain to you how we're going to do this forum. And here we are, Stacey.
Hi everyone, we're going to talk as loud as possible, and we need everyone to please be quiet. So, okay. All right, we are going to get started with the main event.
The mic isn't on, I don't think.
It's on. Okay.
You gotta yell, you
gotta put it right up to your
We're
mouth.
going to introduce the
That's better.
now. We're so excited to have them. We've got John Ossoff, Sarah Indigo, how are you? We're going to let each candidate have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Following introductions, I'm going to ask a question, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer that question. And we're going to vary up the order so nobody goes first every time and nobody goes last every time. And we'll need everyone to be as quiet as possible so that we can hear the candidates speak. Okay? Ready?
Be really close.
Are we ready?
Yes! Stay as close as you can.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Actually.
All right, for the introductions, we'll just start in this direction and we'll start changing up the order.
Okay. Is there a timekeeper?
Yes.
Ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Sarah Riggs-Miko. I hope those of you in the back can hear me okay. Over the course of running for office as the 2018 nominee for Lieutenant Governor and now here, I've been accused of many things, but being quiet is not one of them. So, I appreciate... Okay. Hey, so I'm grateful to be here. Look, I will tell you, I'm coming straight from my daughter's 7th birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese. So it'll be significantly easier to reach this crowd and get y'all to listen than it was the last one I was at. I'm a mom of 2 little girls. I am a proud wife of a naturalized American citizen. This lovely blue-haired gentleman over here is my husband. He says he's leaving the hair blue until we turn Georgia blue, y'all. So I've been a business executive for the last 17 years, and I just stepped down from a job that I loved to run for Senate full-time. I helped build a business from 100 employees in 2008 to 3,000 employees today, and we did it by investing in our people, paying for 100% of health insurance premiums, protecting our unions, providing on-site daycare free to employees, providing paid leave, and over the summer, I spent a lot of time saving the pensions for our union employees. The reality is, at this point, I feel like I'm doing more of David Perdue's job for my employees than he is. So, look, I'm here. I'm grateful to be among a field of really great Democrats. Y'all, we have an embarrassment of riches and talent at every level on the Democratic ticket here in Georgia. And I'm very much looking forward to continuing the work that Stacey Abrams, myself, and a number of candidates from the top to the bottom of the ballot in 2018 did to expand our electorate. Let's be clear, this election will not be won by watering down our values and appealing to Republicans. It will be done and won by finding our voters who share our values and expanding the electorate. Thanks so much for being here today.
Good afternoon, everyone. If at any point, my name is Mayor Ted Terry. I serve as the mayor of the city of Clarkston, Georgia. It's about a 25-minute drive south of here. And if at any point you cannot hear what I say or are wondering more details, please go to my website, tedforgeorgia.com. TEDFOR, GeorgiaSpelledOut.com. My name is Ted Terry, and I'm running for Georgia. I'm running for you. I have policy papers. I have my background. There's ways to contact me if you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok. You can direct message me. There, I will respond. I want to have that conversation and hear from you. I look forward to answering a very detailed group of issues and questions tonight. I do want to point out one thing, and this is actually kind of an honor, because wherever we go, Senator David Perdue follows us. And we're joined here tonight by his tracker. And be nice to him. He's a very nice young man. He's doing his job, so please buy him a drink. But at one point, David Perdue or Mitch McConnell might actually see this message, this video. So let's give him a message. And on the count of 3, I just want to ask everyone to say, hold a town hall. Can we do that? 1, 2, 3. Hold a town hall! Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm running on my record as mayor of the city of Clarkston, Georgia. Clarkston is known as the most ethnically diverse square mile in America. Senator David Perdue is the most anti-immigrant senator in the United States Senate. No one's ever heard of him because he's a freshman. But we need to show a contrast between the future direction our country wants to go in. Do we build walls? Do we shut gates? Do we castigate the stranger, the downtrodden? Or do we become a welcoming nation as in our history? I look forward to getting a lot more detail this afternoon in my record. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Teresa Tomlinson, and it's great to be back in my hometown, stomping ground. Let me tell you something. This election is gravely important. All you have to do is turn on the news and see what's happening to us in domestic and foreign policy and know that your vote in November matters. And I will tell you something. We have inherited a mighty legacy from 2014 and 16 and 18. We have been on a march to turn this state blue, and we need to deliver the very best candidate in the general election to beat David Perdue, because we know that he's vulnerable. We know there was a poll just held. If the election was held today, he would garner 35% of the vote, but 61% of Georgia's registered voters would consider voting for the Democratic nominee, depending on who that nominee is. So it is important that we deliver a nominee who has won hard-fought elections, and I have won every election I have been in by over 60%. Someone who has governed and governed well. I have governed the second largest city in the state of Georgia, 200,000 people, consolidated government, 8 years, governed and governed well. I uniquely can look David Perdue in the eye and say, I know what good government looks like, sir, and you do not deliver it for the people of Georgia. I have a unique political profile that can run hard in Atlanta, where I am from, because I am a proud progressive and can carry these urban, highly populated areas. But also, folks, I have a background as a leader of Southwest Georgia, a family from 7 generations of rural poverty, sharecroppers in South Georgia. I can go to counties where Democrats haven't been in 20 years and say, I know your life. I know how government touches your life, and I will represent you in Washington, D.C. We will shave David Perdue's margins. We will destroy the Republican rural strategy, and we will win for the first time in 18 years a statewide seat for the Democrats and better governing principles. Thank you so very much.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. This is indivisible 6th district. So first of all, I have to say thank you, because together a couple of years ago, we got into a pretty big fight. And when we got in that fight, Tom Price had just won the 6th district by 24%. And in 6 months, when no one, not local Democrats, not national Democrats, thought it was possible, we swung this district by 20%. Under the full fury of the National Republican Party. They had to send down the president, the vice president, and the Speaker of the House to stop us. Not to stop me, to stop us. And we laid the foundations for many of these state legislative victories that have gone on to ensure the people of Georgia have better representation in their legislature. And I am so grateful, so grateful for the time and energy that you put into that effort. So thank you. Now, many of you may be wondering what I've done since that race. And let me tell you that in 2013, I took over a then 21-year-old, multi-Emmy award-winning television production company. We produce investigations of organized crime, political corruption, and war crimes all over the world. And since that race, my company has investigated ISIS war crimes. We have investigated murder and death squads. We have investigated atrocities by peacekeeping troops. We have investigated high-level corruption in politics and corporate international dealings. And right now we have a crisis of corruption in this country. And let me tell you something, it's not just Donald Trump. Arguably, Donald Trump is a symptom of this corruption that we face in this country. And if we do not root out this corruption, we will not be able to solve problems like health care and climate change. Because the power of the pharmaceutical and the insurance industries and the fossil fuel industries are what dictate how David Perdue votes, a man who's taken $2 million in corporate PAC money, a man who was just cited by the FEC for taking illegal amounts of corporate PAC money. We will beat him this year, we will win 2 U.S. Senate seats, and I thank you all for being here.
All right, now I'm going to ask you guys the first question. We're going to start in reverse order this time. So John will take the first one, and then we'll keep going down the line. What makes you most qualified for this seat, and what would be your top priority? You have 60 seconds.
Did everyone hear the question? No. Can I get a waiver on the time? Okay. Well, the question is about qualifications and priorities. Okay? Why is it, even though Congress has the power to lower prescription drug prices, even though Congress has the power to ensure every American has health care, even though Congress has the power to take on the fossil fuel industry and address this environmental crisis, why is it that they do nothing? Why is it that David Perdue does nothing? It is because he is bought and paid for by industries that fund his political organization. The corruption in America is in plain sight. When my company conducts an investigation, we often have to send reporters undercover. We don't have to go undercover to find David Perdue's corruption. It's on the FEC website. $2 million from the same industries that he's meant to regulate in the interests of the people. As I said, so much corporate PAC money that he has been cited by the FEC for violating campaign finance laws. We will expose him for his corruption and for his service of those who keep him in office, whether it's those corporate PACs or the President of the United States. Thank you.
Yes, as far as my qualifications for being a United States Senator, let me start with the fact that I spent 16 years making the federal judiciary system work for citizens, making sure that they had access to justice. I represented some of the biggest cases of the day. You may have heard of the Value Jet crash in the Florida Everglades. I was one of the lead lawyers bringing justice to those families of that great tragedy. I also worked in community revitalization, bringing back economic development to a community without gentrification, which is nearly impossible to do. I've already told you that I've been the two-term mayor of Columbus, Georgia. I was honored to serve. We reformed a budget. I saved a public pension, reformed the healthcare system, reduced crime by 42%. We transformed our community by using the tool of government to solve our problems, not as a weapon to divide us. And in my spare time, I had the joy of saving with thousands of women Sweetbriar College by raising $28.5 million in 110 days, taking the prior leadership to the Virginia Supreme Court, winning, being installed as the chair of the board, reforming their curriculum, their budget, and today that college thrives. So my skill set is to bring function to dysfunctional systems, and my first priority is to bring back stability and functionality to the federal government to serve your lives.
Don't tell me what you believe, show me what you have done, and then I will tell you what you believe. Our deeds in life, where we choose to spend our time, is proof of our commitment. I've spent almost 2 decades of my adult life working as an advocate, an activist for the labor movement, for the environmental movement. The last 6 years I've been mayor of the city of Clarkston, Georgia, and which until recently just paid $6,000 a year as public service. Clarkston was the first city in Georgia to decriminalize marijuana possession, a criminal justice reform measure to reduce mass incarceration. We're the first city to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour for our city employees. We're the first city to make Election Day a holiday. And we did all that in 2016, 3 years ago. We've gone on to outlaw LGBT discrimination, to pass 100% clean energy resolution, fighting to transition our community to clean energy. We've even, we've even improved the first tiny home neighborhood development in Clarkston, creating more affordable housing. Look at my record, that's where you know I stand. Thank you.
Look, as the 2018 nominee for Lieutenant Governor, I went through over 150 counties in the state of Georgia. And I feel like during that time, we not only built community in places where we're not used to seeing statewide Democratic candidates, we saw the results of the ballot box. We tripled the Latinx vote in 2018. We tripled the Asian American Pacific Islander vote. We increased the youth vote by 139%. We built the most diverse electorate in Georgia Democratic politics history. And as a result, Stacey Abrams and I got the most votes of any candidates in the Democratic Party in Georgia State's history for governor and lieutenant governor. And we came up a little bit short, but let me be clear, I do not view that as a loss. We looked voter suppression and election security in this country in the eye. I have been in the belly on the beast on every issue, whether it's providing fully funded health insurance to thousands of employees, standing with my union and putting my own money in to save jobs and health care during the recession, or whether it's out there meeting with voters. I will prioritize health care, voting rights, election security, and your family's economic security, just like I've done for the last 2 decades as a business owner. Thank you.
All right, I'll try to talk loud this time. What will you do to help restore democracy and the checks and balances that should characterize our system of government? And we're going to start with Sarah, work our way down, and then the next time we're going to start in the middle. Okay?
Yeah, the question is, how do we restore checks and balances to our democracy? Yes? Yeah, so interestingly enough, David Perdue's left us a very low bar here. First and foremost, you do the damn job. That's it. A U.S. Senator is not there to be a rubber stamp for any president. A U.S. Senator is not there to have a single audience of one person in the White House. The U.S. Senator is intended to be a representative of the people. Guys, if I am elected to the U.S. Senate, you will be my boss. You will pay my salary, and I will be accountable to come and hear what you think of how we're doing that job. If we can't do that, you have failed. So the best thing we can do is to get in the Senate and do the job the way it was intended to be done. The Senate is supposed to be the grown-ups in the room. You're supposed to be the moderating influence, the place where grand bargains and policy making can happen, and instead, under the leadership of Mitch McConnell, it's turned into a political mud fight. And we need 3 seats if we, God willing, win the White House to flip control of that U.S. Senate and take the gavel away from Mitch McConnell. 2 of those seats can come right here in Georgia. That's how we restore the balances. We flip control of the U.S. Senate. Thank you.
It's time to end the filibuster on issues that 90% of Americans agree on, particularly gun control. So in the Senate, I will support ending the filibuster when it comes to a point where we can pass universal background checks, gun licensing, gun insurance, registry, issues that 90% of Americans agree on, but still a minority of senators continue to hold up with the filibuster. It has been perverted to give too much power to a handful of senators. That's one way to restore checks and balances. Number 2 is addressing the War Powers Act. Last year, 4 American soldiers died in the country of Niger. A lot of members of Congress didn't know that we had troops in Niger. The expansion of our empire of wars and military interventions overseas has cost us trillions of dollars, and we have to restore the balance back to the Congress to fund and also approve military actions around the world.
Almost every issue of great civic instability and debate in this country is a result of the fact that our legislature has ceded their Article I powers to the executive branch out of political cowardice largely. When we look at the War Powers Act, what's going on in Syria today, what's going on with the escalations in Iran, what has been going on with our nation's longest war, a lot of that is because we didn't have the fighters and the leaders in the legislature to make those decisions, and they ceded it to another branch. Tariffs, that's an Article I power. There should have never been a tariff war conducted by one man without the assent of our legislative branch. When it comes to immigration, it should not be set by one person, but it should be set by the assent of our legislative branch. Folks, we have to have put people in the legislature that understands our government, understands how difficult leadership is, and takes that. But let me say this about checks and balances. Our courts have been critically important to us. Donald Trump has just appointed what is the 50% mark of our appellate federal judiciary. 50%. We can no longer depend on the federal judiciary to protect our constitutional rights. We are going to need a strong legislative branch and people that know how to govern up there to ensure our basic rights.
question is how to restore democracy and checks and balances. First, my very first act as your United States Senator will be to back a constitutional amendment that repeals the Citizens United decision and gets dark money out of politics once and for all. Second, restore the Voting Rights Act so that Brian Kemp and his cronies cannot disenfranchise people and then delete the server to destroy the evidence after they do it. And third, and a couple of these great candidates have made this point, Congress must reassert its authority in matters of war and peace. The authorization for the use of military force that was passed after 9/11 is totally inadequate for the national security needs of this country, and the expansion of presidential power, no matter who the president is, so that one individual alone can decide whether this country is at war or not, is irresponsible. It does a disservice to the brave people who serve, and it's unconstitutional.
What would you do to ensure that all Americans have access to quality, affordable health care?
We have the most expensive health care system in the world. $1 trillion more a year than the next contender, which is Switzerland. Folks, I have a policy paper on this on my website, and I'm very specific. We can actually have the federal government just go ahead and take over the expenditures for Medicaid. Instead of just the 90 cents on the dollar, go ahead and pay the 100 cents on the dollar so that no state, none of those 17 states, including Georgia, can deny their most needy citizens access to essential health care. We can put Medicare on the ACA. We can improve the ACA and help make a functional health care system cradle to grave for the folks in this community. And I also say we need to look at expanding Medicare to 55. It has been studied now for 25 years. We know exactly how much it will cost us. We know our administrative structure today can withstand it. These are the types of real policies that have been studied and that we know will work, that we need to have the courage to implement.
First of all, we need to offer American citizens a public health insurance option that is affordable for all, that is comprehensive. If you don't want it, you stick with your private insurer. If you do want it, it's there for you, whether you are rich or poor, broke or in work, or otherwise in need of help. 2, we need to rush medical resources to rural Georgia, and particularly resources for maternal medicine, prenatal, neonatal care. We have the highest maternal mortality rate in the country. My wife is an OBGYN. She sees up close every day why inadequate prenatal care is sentencing Georgia women to needless death. And it particularly affects women of color, and it particularly affects women in the rural areas. We can solve this problem. David Perdue has not. We will.
Guys, talked about in the healthcare debate is that the average company, 7% of their operating budget is healthcare costs. So let's stop looking at this just as a moral obligation, and let me be clear, it is. In 2020 America, no one should be sick because they're poor or poor because they got sick. It's that simple. But we are making American companies and American workers less competitive around the world because our healthcare system costs more and delivers worse results than any other developed nation in the world. We need to decouple health insurance from our employers so that you don't have to stay in a job you loathe just to provide for your family. We need to invest in maternal health care. Guys, you know, we ran a commercial about this in 2018 and everybody told me I was being morose because we put that Georgia had the highest maternal mortality rate in the nation, and I said, you know what, it is morbid. But as the daughter of a NICU nurse, I know it's got to change. And as a human being, looking at this system and seeing that black women in our state are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth, we know there's a lack of equity in our system. We have got to put money to our rural hospitals. We've got to codify, strengthen the Affordable Care Act, and we have got to provide the opportunity for you to buy into a public health insurance program so that we can start letting Americans focus on healthcare outcomes and stop incentivizing the providers and the doctors and the hospital systems to charge solely based on volumes, not the results you get from your healthcare.
Medicare for all, Medicare for all, Medicare for all. I am running to represent the Democratic Party on the general election ballots. 62% of Democrats polled in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution poll, right, Greg Bluestein, say they support Medicare for all. 46% of independents support Medicare for all. 15% of Republicans support Medicare for all. Guess what? When you talk to Democrats who support a public option, you know what they say? It's the pragmatic policy choice. But I really want universal health care. So let's run on the issue. Let's begin with the end in mind. Let's talk about the fact that every other industrialized country in the world has universal health care coverage. We can do it. They figured it out. So can we. It leaves no one behind. Medicare is on the path to bankruptcy. The only way to keep it solvent is through a Medicare for all universal health care system. Thank you.
How would you restore American leadership on the environment?
How would I restore American leadership on the environment? So number one, we have to get back into the Paris Climate Agreements. That is the least we can do. I am running on a Green New Deal. I have actually been working over the last almost 7 years now for the Georgia Sierra Club, for the solar industry, for the environmental movement, pushing not just for a Green New Deal, but to expand solar energy in Georgia. Blueberries and solar are what Georgia are about. We actually produce more blueberries here than peaches. We actually are one of the best states for solar energy. Those two things actually go hand in hand, all right? Blueberry farmers had one of the worst decimations of crops 2 years ago because of erratic weather, frost, freeze, thawing, and the hurricanes, the superstorms that are hitting our state are destroying and decimating parts of rural Georgia. I will never forget the woman who came up from Twiggs County, a population of almost 10,000 people, who came to the Georgia Public Service Commission pleading with the government for more solar in her community. It wasn't about the environment, it was about the economy. Millions of dollars of investment can pour into parts of Georgia that have seen no investment in a generation. It'll help create jobs and tackle the climate crisis.
Yeah, I guess I'm old-fashioned because I think the first thing you need to do to address the environment and climate change is acknowledge that climate change is real. Something that David Perdue and the Republicans have a real issue with. We need to acknowledge it. We need to put science and scientists and facts at the center of how we make public policy. We need to return the full protections for clean air and clean water in this nation. As a mom, there's nothing worse than thinking about whether or not my kids are going to live through an era where we literally have war and mass migration over a lack of food and water. We have got to go out and incentivize a green energy economy. We have got to put this hand in hand with 21st century infrastructure for our water systems, for example. We can make a difference, but we have to act now. We need the data and the science and the scientists practicing it to be at the front and center of every environmental policy we do, independent of our partisan politics. This is the only planet we have to live on. We cannot afford to fail on this issue.
Sarah's right. The choice is between listening to scientists or listening to lobbyists. Listening to NASA and the military and the intelligence community, or listening to lobbyists. And I say no more tax breaks for the oil industry, no more wars to benefit the oil industry, and no more listening to lobbyists from the oil industry because they cut David Perdue corporate PAC checks. We need to get to 100% clean and renewable energy by 2050. We need to re-enter the Paris Accord. We need to pass the most ambitious infrastructure and clean energy program in American history. And as Ted points out, and as I believe we all agree, Georgia can be a leader in this effort, a leading producer of renewable energy, a leading producer of electric vehicles, a leading producer of battery technology. We have the workforce and the academic institutions and the climate to do it, and it's on us to make it happen. And if David Perdue wants to keep listening to the fossil fuel industry, even though an overwhelming majority of the citizens of this state demand action on the environment, our only choice is not just to beat him, but to beat him bad.
Let me tell you something. The first scholarly article to connect the production of carbon and the increase of global temperatures was in 1896. We have eaten up a whole lot of runway, folks. And I will tell you this, the climate change deniers and the Republicans owe Al Gore an apology. We have wasted a whole lot of time, so no, the Green New Deal does not scare me. We need bold ideas, and if there's something in there that we need to rethink or tweak so it doesn't bring about an unintended economic consequence, fine. We can do that legislatively, but let me tell you something. This is a whole new opportunity for a new industry. Millions of jobs in a clean energy industry create a new national clean energy power grid. We can start to incentivize wind turbine industries. We can start to incentivize the solar industry and all other alternative industries. We can stop subsidizing the fossil fuel industry and make them assume the true cost of doing their business. Folks, guess who believes in climate change? Farmers. We have an opportunity to create a great coalition across this entire state and country to bring about an energy industry for our future and our globe. Thank you.
We're going to start with John and go down the road again. Okay? What will you do to help improve our public education system and to ensure fair funding of all schools?
Okay, the question was on education, public education, fair funding for schools, yes?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, let me say this. Public college and university, vocational training, community college need to be 100% debt-free. That is my commitment. I will work to make it happen in the Senate. Second of all, we have to stop putting 4 years of college on a pedestal when someone can move from $10 an hour to $40 an hour with a welding license or a commercial driving license and job training. We can make that happen. And third of all, this is a little controversial. This is not a matter of federal policy, but the question was about equitable funding for public schools. Funding levels for our public schools should not be tied to the wealth of the community that they serve. They should be tied to the needs of the students that they serve.
As a United States Senator, the power we most certainly have is who is going to be the Secretary of Education. And when I am up there, no one like Betsy DeVos would ever be in that particular seat, because we need someone who believes in public education, who has a vision for that which is the great economic equalizer and assures our democracy. That middle-class assurance is by our public school system, folks. And so we need to stop incentivizing those at the highest income rungs to pull their kids out of public schools. We need to make sure that there is equity throughout this country and all schools, so there's no more economic segregation, which in this country today, unfortunately, rides along racial lines, and we're having racial segregation in our public school system. We need to invest. It needs to be a top priority. We need to expand Pell Grants so people can go to college. We need to make two-year institutions free. We can do this, and it will help the economic development potential and prosperity of this great country of ours.
I support the plans that have been put out by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Debt-free public college, universal pre-K and pre-K, universal after-school programs, The best investment that we can make in a society, in our people, is in education, particularly at the early education level. It is the best investment we can make. I am inspired by a town in Italy, Reggio Emilia. If you haven't heard of it, look it up. I had the opportunity to visit there 2 years ago. Reggio Emilia was decimated after World War II. When the leaders got together to rebuild their town, the town fathers said, we need to rebuild the factories because we're a town of industry. The teachers and the parents said, no, rebuild the schools because we want to be a town of learning. They recognized that it's not just the Department of Education, the Board of Education, the school board that are responsible for the education of our young people and through learning throughout the life. It is about the entire community. Here in DeKalb County, our school board member, Marshall Orson, has already told us the sales tax that is being produced by the East Floss is not enough to keep up with the demand for our schools. That means that the federal, local, state, county governments all need to band together to make sure that we have the best education for our young people.
Guys, if we want to make the right investment in public education in this country, the first place you start is to pay teachers and professionals in our schools like the professionals that they are. And look, you can do that by protecting their right to organize. One of the best partners we have in building an economy that works for everyone and building a public school system that takes care of our teachers, educators, and staff are our unions. And you know, I'm somebody who went to public school. I went to the only public high school there was in the town where I grew up. My kids are in public school in Cobb County. I'm the proud granddaughter of a 23-year public school teacher. We need to make sure that the federal government oversight of rural schools and schools that are segregated by race is strong and that it's present. We can do a lot by investing in our teachers, investing in federal incentives for schools that do the work. For schools, that needs to include not only the pre-K and universal child care, but it needs, universal pre-K. It needs to include making sure we're working with our unions for apprenticeships and with our corporations to have work co-op programs so people can go to college no matter where they go debt-free. Thank you. Agility test, stand in interview all the time. I like it.
What policies would be on your priority list that would make the biggest difference, evening the playing field for people of color and for women?
So, did everybody hear the question? Because this is pretty important for Democrats. What are the policies that you will prioritize to address the lack of equity for people of color and women? So, guys, the stakes don't get any higher than this. First and foremost, for women, we need to finally, now that we have, thanks to Virginia, the ERA ratified by the requisite number of states, that needs to become the law of the land. We need the Paycheck Fairness Act. We need to make sure that my daughters will make the same money for the same job that my nephews will, and that goes for any person in this country. And we need to make sure that we codify Roe versus Wade so that women in this country can always make their own health care decisions. And guys, when it comes to race, this is one of the hardest conversations we're going to have. The reality is that the wealth gap between black and white families in this nation has not changed one iota since the Civil Rights Act was passed 50 years ago. We are going to have a long and difficult conversation about reparations, not only for African American descendants of slaves, but also for Native American peoples. And we are going to have to address at the regulatory and federal legislative level racial bias in lending and access to capital so that we can unleash the economic potential of 100% of the people in this nation. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Second to what Sarah said. And let me just put another finer point on it. The issue that the Senate has been dealing with in terms of confirming judges right now. We want to get back to the Democratic majority so we can have a better role in who makes up our judiciary. But the reality is Roe v. Wade has been back and forth for decades in the courts. We need to codify it in federal law to make sure that the legislation that passed here in Georgia last year can never happen again. be repealed, never happen in any other state in the future. On a particular note of racial justice, yes, absolutely, we need to begin the study of reparations. And I know what that is code word for when you say you want to have a study committee. It means you kind of want to kick it down the road. And so I have no problem as a candidate for United States Senate saying that the Democratic Party of Georgia, the Democratic Party, needs to have a policy on reparations. We don't need to wait to see what it might happen to be. It needs to be in our platform. We do that. I'll have it on my website here in a couple of days, my racial justice platform, in particular, reparations through housing remedies, addressing the issues of home ownership between black and white Americans, which now today are as low as they were before and when housing discrimination was legal.
When the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, black families owned 1% of the wealth of this country. Today in 2020, black families own 1.75% of the wealth in this country. Women make 60 cents on the dollar to men. Folks, that could not happen unless there was systemic racial and gender bias in the systems that make up the civic and economic infrastructure of this great country. So I want you to go to my website and see my proposal for a new 21st century civic and economic infrastructure. One, civic infrastructure is power. It involves Voting Rights Act, expanding the Voting Rights Act to all 50 states and bringing back pre-clearance. It involves criminal justice reform. It involves the basic human right of having bodily autonomy for women. And as for prosperity, economic infrastructure, we all must have access to prosperity, and that comes with having a healthcare system, universal healthcare from cradle to grave, in the ways that I've stated before, having wealth gap policies through our banking, through our housing policies that stop this racial and gender discrimination that runs through all of our systems here, because they were put in place in the mid-20th century, and it is time for a 21st century infrastructure. Thank you.
Look, Jim Crow is alive and well in the South today. Jim Crow is alive in the South today. And this is Dr. King's weekend, by the way. And it was 50, 60 years ago that people were getting beaten down, demanding the right to vote across the South. And still, we have not secured the right to vote across the South. And it's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace, and the leaders of this state have disgraced themselves by implementing policies designed to make it harder for people to vote, and particularly for black folks to vote in Georgia. And we need not just to stop those practices, we need to investigate those practices, so that if anyone in this state in the last 5 years has criminally destroyed evidence, has violated the U.S. Constitution, they face criminal investigation for what they have done. I was raised, is my mother here, by the way? Okay. I was raised by a woman who has made her life's work elevating the condition of women in this country, who is an activist, who works to get women elected to local office, and she raised me wearing an ERA Now pin around the house. So yes, we must pass the Equal Rights Amendment, and yes, we must codify Roe v. Wade, and yes, we must achieve equity in pay.
How can Senate rules be repaired so that more bills can be debated on instead of being buried by the Senate leader?
Thank you. It is one of the committees I'd like to sit on, by the way, is the rules of the committee. Those who sit on the rules committee rule by just the fact of the circumstance in the United States Senate. But you heard a moment ago something about getting rid of the filibuster, and it's great to say that. I too have said we need to get rid of the filibuster, but we're going to take the universal disdain for the filibuster and leverage it to rewrite all of the rules of the United States Senate so that bills no longer pile up at the feet of the leader such as Mitch McConnell. It has to get back to doing the people's business. And so know that the United States Senate rules are arcane. Most of them were put in place at the turn of the last century. They were put in place for the purpose of deliberativeness, and they have failed us, because what they have resulted in is just stagnation, a failure to resolve our challenges that face us today. Almost 300 bills are sitting at the door of the Senate with no action whatsoever. Voting rights bills, prescription drug relief bills, bills that will change and improve our lives. And it's just because our Senate is dysfunctional at this point. I will work to change those rules, starting with the filibuster, but not ending with the filibuster.
By the way, I don't usually yell this much, but I want to make sure you can hear me. Okay, look, 2 changes to Senate rules. The first is to abolish the anonymous hold. Y'all know what this is? Any single senator can anonymously prevent a vote to confirm a judge or an ambassador or anyone facing Senate confirmation for whatever self-serving or corrupt reason they want. And they abuse this power, and it has to stop. 2, reduce the number of senators who must agree to force a roll call vote on the floor of the Senate, so that Mitch McConnell cannot act as he has, as he's proclaimed himself, the Grim Reaper, preventing his own caucus from even having to take tough votes that will make them accountable to the people of their states. Thank you.
Look, you've heard a lot of good ideas about how to change the rules, but I submit to you this. The filibuster has not been our friend, but by changing the rules of the U.S. Senate solely to work against the obstructionism of the GOP and Mitch McConnell, that's the will of the people bending to a few corrupt individuals. And I think before we take those sort of drastic steps, guys, we've really got to think about whether we wouldn't be better off to just get them voted out at the ballot box all over this nation. I don't want to treat the symptoms, I want to treat the sickness. And I think the Senate needs people in that body who understand the responsibility and who want to do the work. The fact that you have a majority leader who thinks it's funny to call himself the Grim Reaper because he refuses to take up hundreds of bills passed by a U.S. House led by Democrats isn't a joke. It is a massive injury to our democracy, and it is a massive effort on the part of Republicans to subvert the will of the people. So I'd like us to go back to focusing on what it means when the GOP in the U.S. Senate refuses to act. That is them taking away your voice as a voter.
It might not be a shock to hear, but David Perdue, our United States Senator, has very few friends in the United States Senate. Hurricane Michael relief was very difficult to get because David Perdue doesn't participate in the Senate. So I do agree we have to reform the rules, and I agree with my colleagues here, we can do that. When it comes down to it, politics is about relationships, it's about mutual respect. Some of y'all already know this, but the mayor in Clarkston isn't the head of Clarkston, it's actually the president of the city council. And when I was elected when I was 30 years old, with 6 other council members, all average age 20 years older than I was, going to them saying we should decriminalize marijuana, we should raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, we should have election day as a holiday. Guess what the first thing they said to me is, that's a great idea, not gonna happen. But you keep pushing, you keep working, you develop respect and collegiality, and you keep fighting until you get it. And so yeah, the rules need to be changed, but we need a senator representing Georgia that's gonna actually get along, work across aisles, work across states to build consensus, and that's what I'll do.
We're going to start with Ted. It's going to go Ted, Sarah, John, Teresa. Should you win the primary, what is your path to win the seat? How will you reach out and appeal to voters outside of Atlanta, specifically in rural Georgia?
All right, so if anyone was paying attention, anyone who's involved in the Stacey Abrams campaign knows that we really should have won that election. Stacey Abrams put out the Abrams playbook in August of last year. Everyone should read it, it's about 17 pages. That is the strategy that we should all be following. And the quote from our future and former, our hopeful future governor, maybe vice president, was that we did not do so well by only catering to the small slice of the likely persuadable voters in the middle. We talked to all the voters. And it means campaigning in all 159 counties, yes. It means going to rural Georgia. But it also means being a little bit cold-blooded. I actually caught Nancy Pelosi on Bill Maher on Friday night, and I think she kind of slipped out what I think all of us think, and that's we got to win. And she said we got to be cold-blooded about it. And if I was to be cold-blooded about it, the path to victory, winning statewide in Georgia, is in the 6th and 7th districts. We've already flipped this one. We can flip the 7th one. We increase turnout in these parts of Atlanta. We win the state. That's my strategy.
Look, guys, the path to victory is not a mystery to us or to the Republicans. We need to continue to drive our margins in places where we swung the suburbs, places like Cobb County, where I live. Once upon a time, that used to be the biggest group of Republican votes in the state. And we won that county, Stacey and I, by 54%. So we have got to continue what we've done. And it started right here with you guys in the 6th. We know how to do that. We have got to bring out our voters in the blue precincts. Just because you're in a safe blue seat doesn't mean you can stay home. We need every voice and every vote in our urban areas and in the blue precincts. But we've also got to go and shave margins in middle Georgia and rural Georgia. And those are places where you have to spend time. It helps being somebody who grew up in the Ozarks. These are communities I'm comfortable in. There are a number of them where I overperformed the statewide ticket in the 2018 election. We've got to go out and build community. I just got back from 5 days touring the Georgia coast and the inland counties. There is a lot of poverty. We have got to be fluent in the language of discussing how we're going to defeat poverty if we want to win over those rural votes as well. That's all I think that we have time for.
Hard work, volunteering. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you knocked on doors or made phone calls for Stacey Abrams in 2018? How many of you knocked on doors or made phone calls for my campaign in 2017? The data shows there is nothing more effective at getting out the vote than door-to-door canvassing. And as some of my colleagues have said, that means taking no voter for granted. That means neither assuming that they will not vote or that they will not vote for you. It means going to every single door in this state, every single community in this state, full of goodwill and passion and with an agenda that appeals to everyone in this state. There is no family in Georgia that does not stand to benefit if we ensure that every single citizen can afford health insurance and has health care. There is no family that will not benefit from lowering prescription drug prices. There is no family that will not benefit from massive investment in infrastructure and the environment. So let's take that message across this state and let's win 2 U.S. Senate seats this year.
In 2018, Stacey Abrams came within 55,000 votes of being the first African-American woman governor in the United States of America. And that was amidst a sea of suppression. Folks, those votes, the delta, the change she had from prior elections was 150,000 votes that largely came from the suburbs of North Atlanta. So we have to go back out and get those folks. We have to go to Forsyth. We have to go to Paulney. But here is where we're going to make the difference. And just honestly, my candidacy is uniquely situated to deliver this state as a victory and replace David Perdue. And that is there are 50 counties in central Georgia. Almost all of those counties are minority, majority, African-American majority counties. We only win 25 of those counties. We lost 7 that we had won in 2014. But that is where Columbus, Georgia is located. They know that the mayor of Columbus, Georgia is not a socialist. The people of Columbus, Georgia would have never twice elected a mayor. So David Perdue's strategy of calling us liberals and socialists will fail. I am a proud progressive. I'm going to go into the 100 counties of central and south Georgia, shave his margins, and he will never win this election.
Everyone, that was the last of the questions, and we're going to give the candidates 1 minute each to do a closing.
Thank you. Guys, we came so close in 2018, and it was probably the honor of my life to be a part of it. And I'm asking for your support in this Senate primary. If you want to know that the candidate you select will continue to pursue the Abrams playbook, pick somebody who's already been a part of it. Pick somebody who was out there building it and creating it. And pick somebody that already used that playbook to win 470,000 more votes than David Perdue's ever won. You want to get movement on issues like the environment or gun violence, pick a mom that knows what it's like to have to drop off her daughters in the carpool line the day after the most recent school shooting. If you want to pick somebody who will get your family affordable access to health care and make sure no one in this country is sick because they're poor or poor because they're sick, you pick somebody who's gone to almost every county in Georgia and sat with families who have lost loved ones or been ill simply because they were poor or because the rural hospital they were in closed. That is my experience. That is my heart. I am running for every person in this state, and I invite you to be a part of it with us. Thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you all for being here. I know everyone cares so much about turning Georgia blue in 2020. And I know that because I saw a lot of y'all at events in 2019. All right? Y'all are coming back for more. So I know all of y'all are going to vote, and I want to earn your vote. And I hope over the next 3 months or so, the primary is on May 19th. I hope that I can earn your votes and your support. My website is tedforgeorgia.com. If there's something that you want to talk about, there's issues that I didn't bring up today, please reach out to me. The bullshit meter in this election is very sensitive for a lot of voters because all of us are involved. But we are going to have to go out and talk to people in our orbit, in our daily lives, who wonder what's the point of voting. All politicians are the same. They're all full of it. Think about the candidate that you want to talk about, the candidate that you will be able and excited to tell a stranger about, your family member about, a coworker about. I want you to tell them about me. You can say that you know that Mayor Ted stands for the issues that he is running on because he's done it and fought for it as mayor and for his entire adult life. I ask for your vote on May 19th. Thank you very much.
The United States government is the greatest civic invention mankind has ever known. It is the framework in which we live our most prosperous life. It touches our life every single day, and it matters who runs it. We need to field a candidate who can go up against David Perdue with the bona fides, the gravitas, and the chops of having governed well, having run in hard-fought elections and won, having to pull together coalitions, and somebody who can set a new template for the electoral map of this state so that we can pull together coalitions not just in the metro Atlanta area, but go get our Democratic voters throughout those 100 counties in central and south Georgia and make a coalition the Republicans can never beat again. You join me in this race, and we will send David Perdue packing. We will change the calculus in the United States Senate so that Mitch McConnell will not be the leader of that institution. And we will reform the electoral map of this state, which will change the electoral map of this country indefinitely into the future. Join Team Tomlinson, and that's what we will do for this great state and this country.
David Perdue has got to go. The political leadership we have in this country is robbing us of our decency, our dignity, our kindness, our basic values, our commitment to human rights, our respect in the world. It is not enough just to beat Donald Trump and those like David Perdue who serve him. We need to send a message this year. We need to send a message that if you indulge this kind of politics, you're not just going to get beaten. you're going to get beaten so bad you can never run or show your face again in public. Because we have had enough, absolutely enough, of what we are getting from Donald Trump and his fellow travelers right now. And we have a majority in this state that believes every citizen deserves health care, that believes housing and drug prices are unacceptable and through the roof, that believes this environment needs saving, our infrastructure needs investment. These are majority positions, and we can deliver those policies. But we have to win 2 Senate races. So I'm asking you, whether it's me or any of these candidates, to get ready to work, to get ready to knock on doors, to get ready to make phone calls and write postcards and persuade your neighbors who may need persuading, because there is too much at stake for us to lose. We must win these races, and we will win these races.